on mute, Mr. Johnson. She's not ready.
She's on mute, but I was just messing with her. It surprised her. She's like, ready for what?
Yeah, no.
She's like, oh.
I said I could whip something up real quick, but pull out my old song and dance routine.
Hey, that facial expression was priceless. Why, Gary, you look nice and professional today. How are you?
I think that's a compliment.
It was a great compliment. And how are you, Crystal? You doing okay?
Yes, we're doing fine. It's nice to be here.
Great. Did your son win the baseball game well?
No, they finished in second. That was the tournament, their regional tournament for their conference, college conference, to go to the NCAA tournament. So they lost.
Yeah, I saw they were in it, but I didn't see the final. But oh man.
Yeah, they surprised everybody by beating the number 2 team 15-0. So everybody got excited. And then that very afternoon, the number 1 team scored 23 runs in their game to play us. So we were all like, something's got to give. Something's got to give, and we gave.
Aww. Well, congratulations on making it that far.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's definitely something to build on for his senior year. So it's hard to believe he's already a senior in college.
What school? Northern Kentucky?
Mute, Will.
What school?
I'm sorry, it was Earlham College up in Richmond, Indiana.
Oh, okay. College level. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mr. O'Donnell, how are you? Mr. Weedman? Yeah, I like that. I like that version better. So I could see everybody coming in.
Greg, how are you? Dan, how are you?
Doing great. Doing great. Who's changing the screen on me?
Crystal, I'll change it back.
Okay. Hey, Crystal, can you change it back so I can see everybody coming in? Great. Hey, Mr. Miles, there he is. Hey, Ms. Mitchell.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Gary, we're just waiting on 1 or 2 more.
Hey, Bill, I think you're muted. I think you're trying to talk, but you're muted.
We are Mr. Moore and
Mr. Harris.
Mr. Harris, yes.
Okay.
How is that?
Better.
Yeah, now we hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, who are we waiting for, Greg?
Mr. Moore and Mr. Harris, but it is 6 o'clock, and
yeah,
Crystal will let them in if you want to get started as they come in.
Okay, maybe that's one of them now. All right, everyone. Evening. Thank you for attending this evening's board meeting. CMHA is holding its monthly board meeting virtually via webcam and teleconferencing on Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 as approved through Ohio's novel coronavirus response bill, which directly affects how local governments throughout the state operate in conducting public business. These sweeping changes were originally approved Thursday, March 27, 2020, and extended until July 1st, 2021, via House Bill 404, approved November 19, 2020. This is the contemporaneous meeting for instrumentalities that do not have any new business or matters requiring deliberation. The meetings of the following instrumentalities: Laurel Homes 1, Lincoln View Incorporated, Reserve on South Martin, Southwest Ohio Housing Development Incorporated, Cary Crossing Development Corporation, West Union Square Development Corporation, Sutter View Development Corporation, Pinecrest Rad Development Corporation, Park Eden Evanston LLC, Park Eden Apartments Development Corporation, Mariana Terrace Development Corporation, and Bennett Point Development Corporation
Nikita Flowers joined the meeting.
are hereby called to order. Roll call for attendance, Ms. Mitchell,
Present.
Mr. Weedman.
Present.
Has Mr. Harris joined us?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Okay.
Here.
Is that
Present.
a- Present, thank you, sir. And Mr. O'Donnell,
Present.
Mr. Moore. Not yet joined us, perhaps. And the chair is present. We have a quorum. Commissioners, have you reviewed the April 27, 2021 meeting minutes for these instrumentalities?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Hearing no corrections, roll call to approve. Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
and I don't know if Mr. Moore has been able
Yes,
to.
yes, he's joined us.
All right. Let's hear from you, Commissioner. Yeah, is that a
He's
yes?
muted.
You're muted. Okay, I think, yeah. I think-
Okay, that is a yes.
All right. And the chair
There we go.
votes aye.
My
The
apologies.
motion passes. All right. And if there's no new business for these instrumentalities, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The meeting is adjourned. Now, the regular meeting of Touchstone Property Services Incorporated for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. The meeting is called to order. Roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Present.
Mr. Weedman,
Present.
Mr. Harris,
Present.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Present.
Mr. Moore,
Present.
and the chair is present. We have a quorum. Item 3 is approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Any corrections? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr.
Can I go
O'Donnell.
back this? Can I go back there? I do not want to second this because I was absent at the April 27th meeting. Although was I? I think I was there.
No, you were not. You missed that meeting. So you're
Okay.
accurate. You're accurate, Tom.
Okay, yeah, so let me go back and I will refrain from making a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, motion or second, whichever is needed.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
Sorry about
And,
that.
and then anyone who wasn't at the meeting will abstain from the roll call vote that I call now. Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
I'll let Mr. Weedman abstain.
Abstain.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore.
Aye.
Okay.
That was the meeting on? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
you were there. You were there, Mr. Moore.
Yeah,
You were-
yep, yeah.
Okay, okay. And the chair votes aye, the motion passes. And item 4 is discussion of recommendations, resolution 130 to approve the monthly financial statement for Hamilton County Affordable Housing, Springdale Senior Limited Partnership, DBA Baldwin Grove, the Reserve on South Martin, Cary Crossing, West Union Square, Sutterview, Park Eden, Evanston, Pinecrest, Park Eden Apartments, City West Retail, and Touchstone Property Services for the 4 months ending April 30th, 2021 for calendar year 2021. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A
Second.
second. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, the resolution passes. Resolution 131, providing the authorization to proceed with the request for proposals and solicitations for general goods and services from outside vendors. This is, thank you.
Second.
Yeah, and we're moving and seconding item 1, TP 21-1005, plumbing maintenance services, and 2, TP 21-1006, janitorial services. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, the resolution passes.
Motion
if
to
there-
adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. The Touchstone Property Services Incorporated meeting is closed. Now we move on to the regular board meeting with Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. The meeting is now called to order. Roll call for attendance, Ms. Mitchell,
Present.
Mr. Weedman,
Present.
Mr. Harris,
Present.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Present.
Mr. Moore,
Present.
and the chair is present. We have a quorum. Item 3 is approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. And a second. Thank you. Any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll have move on to roll call. Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Abstain.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The motion passes. And let's see, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held on April 27, 2021?
Motion.
Motion.
Okay, and a second I hear. Did you get that, Gary? Okay. There was a duplication of numbers resulting in resolution 5523 being changed to 5523A. There was not change to the content of that resolution. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Abstain.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The motion passes. Item 4 on our agenda is presentations. We have 3 presenters this evening. First, we have Ms. Janelle Duncan with a procurement department update, and she'll be followed by Marquita and Joe in due time. Looking forward to it. The floor is yours, Janelle.
Hi, I am going to share my floor with Will McCabe, so he's going to be doing part of this. And I'm trying. And my screen is not showing, is it?
Not yet.
Your documents.
Your desktop.
Yay.
There
Now
you
we're
go.
There you
good?
go. Mhm.
There you go.
Okay, so procurement. The first thing I want to talk about is contracts. That's the big thing that we do. We get the contracts for the goods and services that everybody else needs to do their jobs. So at the end of Q3, we had 427 contracts available for people to use. That covered 156 unique goods or services, and it was spread out among 263 unique contractors. What's neat about this is we've continued to increase. We've more than doubled the number of contracts and contractors and unique services since 2015. With those contracts, I know these numbers don't match because they're taken at 2 different times. The last one was the end of Q3. As of May 18th, we had 453 non-construction contracts. Out of those, 27% were minority-owned business. Our goal is 12%. Out of that, there were 9% women-owned businesses, and our goal for that is 5%. And then we also had 28% Section 3. We also had 79% local nexus. When I say
What was
local
our
nexus,
goal? What was our goal for Section 3, Janelle?
I have to scoot it over. 5%.
Wow.
Yeah, we do pretty good.
Yeah.
Local nexus is the contracts that either the company has their office in Cincinnati or they have a field office in Cincinnati, that the money that we're paying for these goods and services go back into this area. And Mr. Johnson's always talking about the economic impact that we have. So this is an example of that.
And what is our goal for that?
I don't think we have it.
We don't have a goal for that because we cannot direct it because we're spending federal money. So anyone, anywhere in the country can apply, but we keep track of it because we want to make sure that we're able to tell the story of what impact we're making in the community. So we can't really have a goal for that. The city, they can, because they have state local tax dollars that they can direct in that area, but we can't direct it just to local.
Can you give us a clue of what the trend is, if there is one, since 2015 for this column?
I don't think we tracked it that long. I can go back and see where we are and see what I can pull and have Mr. Johnson send that to you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the point being that we've never spent this much money before. It would be wonderful if it happens to change hands 4 to 7 times before it leaves the area. But please continue.
Okay. When COVID hit, we had to change what we were doing. We had to adapt quickly. We looked at it as an opportunity to change what we did, to make it better, make it more efficient, and make sure that we still maintained all the compliance that we need to do. So some of the changes that we made were virtual procurement and purchase trainings. We also recorded those. Will's going to talk about that. We created electronic checklists, including references to the Code of Federal Regulations. We have to follow the HUD procurement handbook. We created electronic routing process and document signatures. We also created virtual pre-proposal meetings and solicitation assistant videos. So the pre-proposal meetings are kind of nice because out-of-town companies, even though we would offer call-ins, it's just different if everybody else is there in person and you're virtual. So this way it was even across the board, everybody had the same experience. The solicitation videos, I know some of you have heard me talk before. We did a how to do business presentation that we did for some of our solicitations, and we went through every document and all the different areas that they needed to work on to get a winning proposal. So what we did when COVID hit is I spent a day and recorded all of those, so they're on our website. So now anybody can look at them anytime. They can watch the same video over 5 or 6 times until they figure out what they need to do. So I think that was a big improvement that we made. And Will is going to talk for a little bit now.
Thanks, Janelle. Hi, my name is Will McCabe. Handle the purchasing department, facilities, and fleet. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. As Janelle mentioned, the contracts are for goods and services. And when we utilize that, we require purchase orders to be created. So I wanted to highlight that since November of 2020, we've had 52 attendees attend 11 sessions for training on purchase orders and how to utilize them in the Yardi system, as well as a procurement training for micro purchases, 3-quote process, our life and safety procedures, how to use the contracts, where to find them. And again, the 47 attendees came in for the procurement training. Back to Janelle.
What are your takeaways after this many weeks with users of the Yardi system in this department?
It's one of the systems, in my opinion, that you have to really get hands-on before you really get efficient with it, because it is very detailed, but it's very user-friendly. We've found many things that we can do to help us make the processes easier. So I think a lot of people are very happy with it. I know I am, and it's a good system. We get a good feedback on it.
Good.
It's interesting because I've watched the training multiple times with setting it up with Will, and I think each time I learned just another little trick on how to manage the purchase orders in the system. So it's neat. Some of the people that took the training really, really grasped it and did excellent. So
At this point, are you realizing the advantages of this system in terms of the number of phone calls from vendors and such? Are you realizing efficiencies from this going
like I
live?
say, this was training internal. We're going to be starting external training using something called Vendor Cafe. And Mark is handling that through the IT department more. But with this, yeah, I think it's been good. It's been nice too, because we're doing the training every other week, so we can have nice small groups, and people felt very open to ask questions, and it was good back and forth.
So I'm misunderstanding. It's not live. It's not been rolled out yet.
This training that Will is talking about.
The training has been rolled out. I think what Janelle was trying to explain is that all of the training has been for internal staff. So as far as questions or calls that we would get from external groups, they would not make calls centered around this training. What this training is to provide everyone with the expertise and the processes to follow to be sure that we're within the HUD rules and regulations and the state rules and regulations as it pertains to procurement, and then utilizing our new systems. Mark talked about a lot of vendor cafe that we're rolling out that interact with our purchase orders and things like that, and our work orders. This side of it is the internal side, and the amount of training that we've done with our staff to ensure that they're comfortable and they're working the systems correctly. Your question was how the users feel about the system, and Will is accurate that the system that we have is very detailed, and that's why we have so many trainings, because once people get used to it, we're finding that we're getting a lot of reports, and we'll be able to tell, and it spits out a lot of information for us. So the efficiency goes there because we can see where we're spending our money and when, the time of year, and then how much. So we're getting a lot of efficiencies that way from the system as the users is getting used to using it accurate and properly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I said that we created checklists, and this is example. There's two checklists side by side on the screen. Some of the checklists that we developed to do electronically was just preparing for the board. So the left side is what the checklist we go through to prepare contract options, and then the right side is new contract awards. So the top part of each of these then is the resolution. What all do we need to put in the resolution? What do you need to see so that you can make determinations? And then the bottom part that's cut off a little bit is the rationale. Again, what do we need to make sure that's in each one of those? So we go through this checklist every time we prepared board documents. So this was a good addition. Like I said, we keep this electronically.
So Yardi is purely procurement. So only procurement users are using the system.
No, we switched gears on you. I'm sorry. So Yardi is what we just talked about. Now this is just
okay.
flat out an Adobe PDF.
Okay.
That's okay. This is just Adobe PDF fillable that we use.
Okay.
But to answer your question, Yardi has multiple platforms, and procurement is just one of the platforms. It has a platform for each department to use.
Is this separate from Yardi right here, this checklist?
Yes.
This checklist is separate because what Janelle has done is she's created a document that keeps us within the state, local, and federal rules So every time that she does something or procures something, she has herself and her staff go through this checklist to make sure that all the bases were covered.
Right. Could we do that in Yardi, Greg?
That would be a Mark question. If he could put that in Yardi and then allow the click and point to happen.
Right.
We would, we'd have to check. Some of this is probably encapsulated in the workflows for POs and some of the other workflow items that are there. But this particular document, we'd have to work with Yardi to see how best to implement that.
Yeah, this doesn't really rely on much of the data in Yardi. This is separate.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
I just
there's,
wanted you to see, it's like what we really do try to make sure that we get everything that you typically want to see in all the resolutions and the memos. So some of the other processes and that we've done the training on, and we've also created checklist, is 3-quote and life safety. So 3-quote is when you have to ask for at least 3 quotes and it has to be under $50,000. But if you need something quick, you don't have time for procurement, you can do it yourself. So what we developed is a 3-quote checklist. And that's the part at the top. And I'm going to explain, if you look, there's square brackets around this 2.5. Anytime you see square brackets, that's the section of the HUD procurement handbook that says you have to do that. And then down here, you'll see squiggly brackets. And that is the section of the Code of Federal Regulations in 2 CFR Part 200 that says we have to do that. So we wanted the references for more of an explanation of what the thing was, but also this is why we have to do it. So we tried to pare these down as simply as we could so that anybody could just go through the checklist and do a compliant either 3-quote process or a life safety process. And then these can also be saved for in the system to go back and look at. For each of our procurements that we do, like the request for proposals, and you're going to see one of those later tonight that we did for printing and mailing, we have a checklist for each phase of the procurement. Typically, we just did those by hand and they were kept in a binder on somebody's desk, which meant that guy had great access to them and everybody else had to go and find the binder and look it up. Now we're doing it all electronically. So we think this has just been fantastic to help us know better where we are in our solicitations. Anybody can look at the file and know. So with this, we've got, again, the references to the Code of Federal Regulations and to the HUD procurement handbook. We also added blocks that as you do things, you initial it, and that way we know who's done it. Then at the bottom of each of these, we have a verification that you've gone through. Yep, we did everything right. Now we go to the next step. Electronic document routing. Previously, after you had approved a resolution that we could award a contract, we had to create a routing folder. It was a big legal manila folder and it had to go from office to office for all the signatures before Mr. Johnson could sign off on the contract. So with COVID, we had to switch to electronic, which really can be great because we can just make phone calls and get things through quickly if we need to. So we use the Adobe PDF signatures for these also. When we did the electronic document routing form, we made sure that we included what resolution, approved the solicitation and the contract, what the spending limits were, the funding sources, any performance standard where that was in the contract, and any relevant board resolutions. And Mr. McCabe is going to take over on another one of his areas.
Hi, I just wanted to highlight some areas of our CMHA warehouse. One of the things that we utilize in the warehouse to save some money is bulk purchasing. We will work with our vendors to buy in large bulk amounts to save some money. And in many of the cases, like the appliances, they're willing to store them at their site. So we don't have to take up the space in our small warehouses, but they'll give us the contracted price if we buy in a certain amounts. So we saved over $17,500 in this quarter alone. So that's a really positive thing that we do in the warehousing. One of the things we also wanted to highlight is the mid-year inventory. We go twice a year through the inventory and we come up with our goal is less than 1% variance. And as you can see, we actually had 0.1% variance. So that's our book value compared to our actual on-hand counted value. So we're we're pretty accurate in our warehousing. One of the things that we did during the COVID pandemic was we had to work with our suppliers to ensure we had plenty of appliances, the stoves and refrigerators, to make sure that they were available. There was a national shortage on these, and they were very hard to get. So we worked really diligently and hard with our suppliers to make sure we had plenty on hand. We also added PPE and sanitizing items to our inventory to ensure everybody's safety and to help reduce the spread of the COVID virus. I also handle the fleet. So what we want to talk about is our fleet is made up of 111 vehicles. Currently, we have 35 pickup trucks, 38 sedans, 30 vans, and 8 stake bodies. The average age is currently 2011. And this quarter, we had 6 vehicles that we delivered to the city auction that had become obsolete or too expensive to repair. Back to you, Janelle. No, I'm sorry. This is also mine. Sorry. I'm also handled the facilities, and just wanted to highlight some of the things that we did during the COVID, pandemic. We installed the iWave systems. I think we talked about this before. So every one of our HVAC units has an iWave system in it. These units increase air filtration and reduce the spread of the airborne pathogens such as COVID-19 and other ones. We continue to work with our third-party safety consultant. Comes in and they review our safety protocols to identify possible updates or changes that we can make. And then we added 2 security cameras to our campus recently to add additional safety to our clients and staff.
How much of that was from federal COVID funds?
It was all of it. The iWave systems and the, as you can see, the screens, everything that we did for the COVID safety protocols and the camera systems, we added because the drop boxes were in the parking lot. So those were paid for out of that. So this would be 100% of what I talked about.
Okay. Is that the board members table that we're seeing?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. That's just a small example of some of the custom screens that we had made. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who will make the decision about how long those screens remain in place?
Well, we'll probably get with our third-party safety consultant and have them come in and talk to us. And I'm sure with Greg and the rest of the team, we'll sit and talk with them and make the decision.
But ultimately, Mr. Miles, it'll be the board members.
Thank you.
Our plan, so ultimately it'll be the board because you guys will be sitting there.
Yeah, but we'll be informed by those consultants as we make a decision.
Yeah, and right now what they've said so far is it's okay to take the front part off and leave the sides up because that continues to create the separation. And since we're not going to have anyone but the board members and myself during a board meeting, then that makes it safe for the board.
Oh. And you anticipate that limited attendance for how long? If you can
forever. We have made arrangements where either each board member is going to have a laptop at their place setting. So just like everyone can see you now, they'll be able to see you. You all have to be in person. So you'll be in person and the boardroom. And if someone comes to speak, if they wish to speak, we have the training room. If you remember the training room on the other side, we're making it available for them to sit in the training room, speak to the board if they don't have their own capabilities to do Zoom. So they can, have a chance to speak to the board and do it that way. And we just felt like that keeps everyone as safe as possible and given the appropriate access and abiding by the state law.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Will or I?
Board members?
I have one question, Janelle, and that's about the slider with the fleet information on it. Did I see that correctly, that the average age of the fleet is 10 years? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
10 or 11?
The 2011 is the average year, so they're 10 years old on average.
I beg your pardon. Yeah.
So, I mean, how big a concern is that? It sounds old to me.
Well, we stay on top of taking care of them. We have a lot of communication between staff when items need to be corrected or repaired. We have them on consistent oil changes. They get a safety check each time they go in for any type of item. The company we have a contract with, Elite Automotive, goes through a safety protocol on the vehicles. And we have times where we do a quarterly check on them. They'll bring the vehicles down and we'll look them over and make sure everything's good. So we stay on top of them. So we're pretty happy with it.
Are these vehicles mostly leased or are they all owned by CMHA?
They're all owned.
They're all owned. Okay.
Mhm.
And we no longer do maintenance on site, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that is,
No. What was your question, Mr. O'Donnell?
my question is, do we do vehicle maintenance on site anymore?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, we don't.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, I mean, obviously there's a point at which maintenance costs become prohibitive and it's more economical to replace the vehicles. And I'm assuming that you're on top of that, but it's just 10 years old on average sounds old to me personally. You know, I mean, it sounds like a lot of old vehicles. So
I heard last week that the average vehicle on the American highway roads is 13 years old.
wow, really?
It surprised me too. I want to believe that our vehicles on average are better maintained than the average of the population.
Right.
Would
They
that be
are.
okay?
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything more, Janelle or Will? That's a no?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing all that information. It's very promising what you're about. And as we look into the future, that's the kind of work we want to be happening. Any other board members with a comment or observation? Okay. Now we're ready for Marquita to present to us. Are you ready, Marquita?
Mr. Miles, just before Marquita starts, I just want to make sure that I comment. The amount of work that goes into us buying a pencil is a lot. And so if you notice all of those checklists and items that Janelle has presented keeps all of us in the millions of dollars that we spend in compliance. So whenever the board is asked to approve a contract, you can see it's been vetted, re-vetted, and turned over again because Janelle and her staff are pretty diligent about making sure that it goes through the right way. The other thing I want to make sure the board is aware of is that you guys have one of the top procurement departments in the state of Ohio. Our field office has called and asked us to perform procurement for other PHAs that I should say maybe are struggling with how to get it done. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that because a lot of work has gone in getting us where we are today from where we were probably 10, 12 years ago. So I just wanted to make sure I said that.
Great.
That's great. I remember Rima talking to us several years ago about profit center opportunities beyond the core CMHA operations. I hear you say other housing authorities are asking to take advantage of the skill of Janelle and Will and their team members. Are we getting paid for that?
Well, it's not it's our field office. So that's even better. So,
Okay.
and the question would be, yes, if we were to take on that, obviously Janelle would need more staff, but it would not be for free. And we haven't decided whether we're ready to do that because we have a lot that's going on with all of our construction
Yeah.
And what I don't want to do is go after a dollar that doesn't make sense, and then we get tripped up. So
yeah,
but it's nice to be in the position that your
Yes.
field office
What's
is
that worth?
recommending. Yeah,
That's worth
yeah,
a lot.
yeah. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
Good to hear.
Great.
I say we also included Covington Housing Authority attended some of the trainings for the purchasing procurement that Will did. They're looking at going to Yardi, so that's another area that we might finagle a revenue stream.
Yes, they were very happy to hear from us and Mark as well with the IT side of it. We worked with them for a couple hours.
Excellent.
Okay, Marquita, I'm sorry.
Ready for you, Marquita.
I think she's getting her screen there. I believe it looks like she's working diligently at it. Looks like.
I think you tap your heels together and say something 3 times.
Okay, I had to unmute myself. All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
I am presenting on update on the property management department. And I just want to remind everyone, about a year ago, a little better than that, property management and asset management and the Touchstone properties all merged into one department. And so during the update, you'll see where we're talking about what's going on with our Touchstone property, as well as what's going on with our asset management properties, which are our legacy properties. Okay. There we go. So today I'm going to talk to you about one of our residents. We're going to talk about the demographics, who are we serving, has that changed any? Also talk about what's going on with our properties, and of course, on all of our minds, our RAD conversions. And I want to talk a little bit about how property management is contributing to the effort to preserve affordable housing and to further the RAD conversion. So here you can see when you look at all of the residents, and again, that's our Touchstone residents as well as our asset management residents, we're looking at that we're serving 9,879 individuals. Touchstone is 9% of those, and then the other 91% is our asset management portfolio. The length of stay with us in Touchstone is 3 years, and in asset management, it is 8 years. And actually that asset, took a look back at 2016, and looks like that on the asset management side, that the number of years with us have increased by 2 years in comparison to 2016.
Is there any particular reason? Is it COVID that skewed it?
I think that when we had the recession, I think that individuals chose to stay with us as waiting for the economy to turn. And I think that some people decided to stay. Also, what I'm seeing just anecdotally in the sites is, of course, we have aging population. Our residents are staying with us a little longer, I think, because we have what some other landlords don't have, which is accessible units and the ability to allow people to age with us. So maybe before you didn't need a unit with no steps, and we're able to transition you into a unit like that.
Marquita, can I ask a question just quickly? This is total residence assisted. How many units does this represent roughly, or approximately?
This is about 4,600 units.
Okay, 4,600 units. And 9,879 residents. And does this number include children of all ages?
It does.
It does.
It does.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And then when you look at the demographic of our residents, so this, again, these are, this is looking at the total population. You're looking at 17% being disabled. And then looking at the total population, 11% elderly. And then again, looking at the total population, 18% are working. And then as far as our children, you were asking the question about our children. The children are about 45% of that total.
But this
Yeah.
graphic here that's saying 18% working, we're not doing 18 plus or 16 up. You're taking this number out of the total population, including young children.
Yeah, but and I took a look at that, and it's not very many children that are having like the part-time jobs. It's not even 1%.
How many of our leases are working?
It's the you mean the actual number? So it's 18% of the total population that are working. That doesn't mean that the 82% doesn't have income, but it's 18% that are actually having some type of wage income.
And so I guess my question for this is that what is when you're saying total population, what is the age range for the measurement of the working population?
Mm-hmm. It is the entire 9,879.
Yeah, but he's asking, are you starting at 17 years old, 16
Right.
years old? And so, Mr. Harris, where we start and where we get the information from, so anyone that we can use as calculating rent, such as if a child that's 16 or 17 in a household, they're not the head of household, and if their wages don't count because it's a summer job or something, she's not grabbing those. She's only grabbing wages for individuals in the household that are, so if we're just looking at that, we're looking at anyone that's 18 years or older, because those would be the individuals that would have countable wages in our portfolios. So it's probably between 18 all the way up until our oldest resident, which I think is in 98 or 99. If you say, what is the age range? And then if you say, what is the age range for the bulk of that 18%? And so now we're talking about 18 to 59 years old, because we have a lot of seniors that have gone back to Walmart and things like that.
Okay.
I think that's really the question that Mr. Harris was going after, and I think it's an interesting statistic for me to take all of the 9,800 and whatever that number was of total residents. How many of them fall in that age range between, let's say, 18 and 59 or 60, and are not disabled, and are
Right.
not
Yeah, I
elderly,
agree.
for example. So the total potential work, the group that is potentially the workforce or potentially able to work, I guess, and then what percentage of them is actually working. That would be a very interesting number for us to see.
Yeah,
Sure, we could get that. We could get that for you. It would take a little bit more calculation, but we can definitely get that that rounded number, because what we just have to take the disabled individuals out, and then that number will pop right off the screen. So yeah, we can do that.
And the elderly and the children, pick an age, 16
Yeah.
or 18, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we could get that. That'd be easy.
And I think that would actually.
Go ahead, Ed.
Go ahead.
It seems the narrative that we hear over and over is the majority of our tenants work. Those who aren't elderly, or disabled. And the 18% number in the third circle doesn't seem consistent with that.
Well, I think today, if we have to look at the pandemic, so these are numbers that were over the last fiscal year. So I would say yes, maybe the last 2 years, those numbers were higher. But over the last year, a lot of individuals have lost their job. And then, I mean, I hate to say, but some individuals work at jobs that are under the table, which we don't count because we don't have the information. But the 18% is low. I would agree it's low, but it's low because of the pandemic, and a lot of individuals have not gone back to work. And you're going to see in a couple more slides the number of recertifications that the department has done, and that'll give you an idea of why the shift. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because we had to shift people from working from income to zero income overall.
So what I think would be really, what I would like to see is if we could maybe just have a very clean data set, right? So work eligible, 18 to 64, right? Just truly work eligible. And then maybe to look at that number from, let's say, 2018, 2019. And see, so we can get a baseline to see, like, in a time, that's not pandemic, right, with jobs, like where we are with that working number. And then I do think it is, I mean, this is just a challenge when working in any sort of subsidized housing is, right, capturing jobs that people do work, where they're getting paid cash underneath the table, or people work because they do hair, or they're a mechanic on the side, right? And so that's always a hard thing to capture, but yeah.
No, we can do that, and I can't say, but just knowing what, because we look at that, and give you a little example. Obviously, when people are working more, our subsidy goes down. And so those years you're speaking of, our subsidy went down because people were working more, and so they were paying more rent. And then it's flipped because so our new numbers we turned in is because people are working less. But I'll get those for you, and I'll put them in a nice table set so you can see the progression or the non-progression as far as working families at a certain point and then not working, and where it plateaued and then fell and went back. So I can do that. Yeah.
And that gives us a baseline to look and compare these numbers into the next few years, to compare our residents' experiences with the general population at re-entering the workforce, for example. That would be interesting to me, I know.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
One other quick thing on this before we move on, is the data available to break down the working group by part-time, full-time, something like that? Do we have that kind of data or not?
No, it's not captured in that kind of. Well, we'll go back. Let us go back and take a look at what we can pull from the system.
Yeah, I think that would be a very good idea. I mean, it's just a question of how deep is the data, because I think it would also be helpful to see, once we have this group of work eligible, how many of them are working and how many of them are working full-time versus part-time. Any further information, I think, would be really interesting and helpful for us also, and helpful for us to make our case.
Yeah, I can probably tell you, Mr. O'Donnell, that it won't tell us whether it's part-time or full-time, because what we capture is how much you make annually. So we wouldn't be, unless a person says it to us, but then we would have to go, we don't capture it in the system. But we capture, how much annually. So we take whatever that number is and multiply it by 12. The only way we wouldn't even know that if somebody filled it out in their declaration is that this is part-time, but we don't take that and then put it in the system overall.
Okay.
But I agree with you. What we try to look at every year, when the subsidy number, before we send it in, we sit down and we say, okay, if the subsidy went up and down, we take the factor out of what HUD's going to do, and we say, if we got 100% of the subsidy, what happened positively or negatively? And the first place we go look is, did we have more people working, or the people that are working, did they make more money? And to your point, did their hours increase at their positions, right?
Yeah.
Because you can have a set of individuals, and that's what happened to us the last 2 previous years. I wouldn't say that we had a high number, higher than previous, but their income increased, and that's what affected the subsidy. But I'll bury down as far as I can to make sure I can give you a good, accurate data set, though.
I think it would be really interesting to create some metrics like this that we can use over time, including going back, like Reggie suggested, maybe a couple of years, but maybe look at this on an ongoing basis. And maybe if it's possible, we look at different levels of income, like X number of working eligible earned in this range, X number of earned income in this range. And it would be really interesting if we could see people moving up, moving from one income category to a higher income category. Maybe I don't know if the data would show that or not, but if it does, I think it would be really something interesting.
No, the data would show, it would basically show were people getting poorer,
yes,
or were they getting in a better financial position?
Yeah, I think
so it would definitely show that. And so I think we can all guess during the pandemic, on paper, because of their work history, they got poorer. But I don't know if we can 100% say that because of the stimulus, right?
Yeah.
So there's one of those unknown factors, right, that we can't capture. But just on paper, it will tell us that financially our residents got put in a worse situation based on the data that we captured. But we'll grab it and then we'll see.
Yeah.
But I agree with
Yeah. Not to bog you down in these requests. I don't think any of us are asking to do that. But it would be interesting to know too, how many people's income increased because of state unemployment and the federal plus up, those who found themselves out of work.
But we don't calculate that though, so they don't have to tell us.
They don't have to tell us.
No, they don't. We don't capture that. So
unemployment.
But we'll get as much as we can, and then we'll see where we land on.
Okay.
So real quick for me, Greg, the 18% working. I mean, we want to see that number go up, right? We want residents to be working, right? Tenants to be working.
Yeah, I think all of us, including the tenants, will want to be working. And so they want to see that number go up. So yeah, that is the goal. That is the goal of what we all want to see. Now,
I would just be curious to know what we could do as an agency to try to impact that. And I don't know what that is, Greg, but what can we do to impact to get that number to go up, if we can do anything?
Yeah, I think that our main sweet spot is to make sure that we're providing the best housing, and then partner with organizations that do the other part, meaning knocking down barriers for individuals. And so that's why we have that partnership. Now we have some elaborate partnerships throughout the community with individuals that do that work, because we know that that's where ultimately we all want people to be, whatever it is their plateau is, and as high on a financial, train that they can go and as possible. So we build a lot of partnerships to make sure that people have access to the information, to the training, to gain additional employment. And we do that on both sides of the house with our FSS program. So I'll have a lot of information where you could see that actually on a document I'm going to be giving you this week. So you'll be able to see in the back of that document the partnerships we have. And Mary, if you guys go back and look at the presentation that Mary did, she had a lot of those partnerships and then impact of those partnerships that impacted the individuals' lives. But obviously this past year has been difficult, but we've been focusing on making sure people were safe, getting vaccinated, tested, and all those things rather than finding a job, right? So now we're going back to, as everything's opening up, that whole job preparation mode versus the other mode the last 12 months has been safety, right? Keeping people safe and giving them access to what the community had to offer as far as the vaccinations and testing and PPEs and all of that.
Was there another board member question? No, I just have one more question. So let's say that I'm a tenant of public housing at CMHA and I had a job, but COVID came along and government shut my employer down. I lost my job. I was, because of that employment, eligible for state unemployment benefits and a federal plus-up. Is it conceivable that some of our tenants made as much or even more than they did before losing their positions? And if I asked CMHA to recertify the rent that I should pay because I have lost my job, are you saying that the unemployment benefits, state and federal, would not be considered in that recertification of income?
I'll let Marquita answer that one.
Yes. So any income that you're getting, including those unemployment benefits, would be considered in the calculation of your rent.
Okay, great. Okay, I appreciate the clarification on that. Any other questions? Okay.
Does that include stimulus payments as well?
I don't think so. Your answer, Marquita?
Yeah, the stimulus payments, I need to double check that one. I don't have the.
No, they don't. It doesn't include stimulus payments. Only the unemployment. Only the unemployment, but not stimulus.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So we were talking about the different sources of income. Talking about working. But also a number of our residents are receiving Social Security, SSI, pensions. We talked about employment in OWF, which is a cash payment from Job and Family Services. The average household income for asset management is $10,504, and then for Touchstone, it's $13,876. And then also just to draw your attention to this bottom piece here, where it's just pointing out that the area median income for a family of 4 in Hamilton County is $57,000. So during the pandemic, we continued to work, reaching out to our residents. We were just talking about recertifications. So what we did with our recertifications is that to ensure social distancing, we changed our process to allow for a mail-in option for residents. And then we installed drop boxes in our management office and our community rooms so that as individuals completed those, they had the option of mailing it back to us, or they could drop it off in the drop boxes, and our staff would pick those up every day. But during the pandemic, we processed 6,569 certifications with our 5 recertification specialists, and we had property managers on the Touchstone side also processing our recertifications. That's both the annual recertifications that we're required to do, but also the interim. And so as we were talking about individuals who are, losing employment, those individuals completed an interim for us. And that's basically just a notification to us that they've had some type of change in their family income. During this time, it was very important that we stay in touch with our residents. We did a tremendous number of conference calls. We did a number of one calls to our residents, trying to keep them up to speed on COVID-19, but also any changes we had to our processes during this time. And internally, we had a departmental meeting so that our staff was staying up to date on processes, changes, and if they had any questions that they wanted to ask, we wanted to give them a forum in which they could do that.
I am wondering, in the course of determining eligibility for subsidy, are we indifferent to how much an applicant has in savings, or the value of their automobile, or year of their automobile?
No, not the value of their automobile, but its assets. So we look at assets. So we do ask for bank statements and review, and it goes on if a person has a certain amount of assets, and if they earn any interest or any, anything off of that asset, that's calculated. I would say of anyone that has an annual income of 10,000 or 13,000, they don't have any assets at all. So we do ask for that on a declaration, but there's not. In my 26 years, I haven't had to calculate or seen anyone that would have assets that we would add into the rental calculation.
And how about the value of an automobile? Is there
No,
any nexus?
we don't look at whether a person has a car or anything.
Or whether it's a new car,
no,
the value of it. Okay.
No.
And these aren't our rules, these are HUD rules.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Part of our communication to our residents was about the availability of rental assistance should they need it. In particular, we had a really great we have a really great partnership with Community Action Agency. They had home relief funds that we were able to use. We were able to connect our residents to them so that they would assist them in rental payments and any assistance they may need with a utility payment. And then now with the COVID relief funds, we're doing the same thing. This is a little different than some of the other processes that CMHA has, and they have developed an electronic system that residents can go in, or anyone who is finding themselves in need a rental assistance because of COVID-19, they can go in and electronically complete the form. But what the Community Action Agency has allowed us to do is to get applications directly from the resident and help them get the information directly to Community Action Agency. And one of the things that was identified very early on as a barrier was that sometimes individuals were having problems getting the documents together that was needed for them to determine the eligibility. And that was one of the things that we were able to assist them with, because that's information that we collect during our recertification process. And the residents signed an agreement that we could share that with Community Action Agency. So that helped to speed up the process. So we have so far it's resulted in $708,000 of rental assistance for our residents. And we're continuing to work with Community Action Agency for some of the individuals who may just be wanting to participate in this kind of a program. Mr. Johnson already spoke to you about the testing that we did early on, having the National Guard come to our properties along with other testing services, go to our properties throughout the county so that residents had an opportunity to be tested if they would like. And through that effort, we were able to have 15 testing sites, and we were able to test 102 individuals. And then when the vaccine became available, we did the same thing. We had 20 vaccination clinics, and with that, we were able to have 761 individuals vaccinated. So it was available not only to our residents, but it was available to our community members. Especially, I remember the one at Stanley Row that it actually was one of the first ones. And that one was not only publicized among our residents, but it was publicized throughout the city.
So Marquita, are we still doing vaccination clinics or?
Yeah, we just did one last week in Marquette, and we're looking at whether or not there's some other locations that we should go ahead and do some more vaccination clinics with the National Guard. So some of what we're seeing, and actually I've been seeing comments about this on TV as well, is that it's kind of slowed down. You had a number of people who very early on made the decision that they wanted to get the vaccination and sought out these clinics. And now that's kind of slowed down. And we've seen that as we've been sending out one calls and asking residents at the various locations if they wanted to participate in the vaccination. And what we found is that they have, the ones who wanted to have already found other locations to be vaccinated. So it's kind of slowed down in the last, I would say, 3 weeks.
So are we able to find out how many of our residents have been vaccinated, period? You know what I'm saying? Even if we don't have clinics, is that information valuable to us in any way to find out how many have been vaccinated?
Yeah. So we're not collecting that data, since this is relating to individuals' health care. But what we are able to do is to reach out to the individuals that are within the general vicinity of the clinics and just ask them if they would like to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, Ms. Mitchell, we wanted to make sure that all of our residents had access. One of the big things is about access. So I feel real good about that. And we had a call today with about 10 residents, Marquita and I mentioned that, and every last one of those residents said, yes, we had access to testing and vaccination for anybody that. So that felt good. It came from them. So we wanted to make sure that they had access, and we are slated to be one of the first organizations to have access or utilize the mobile station that's being put together by the county. So we're on the list for not only vaccination through the mobile unit, but asking for additional services for that mobile unit to have maybe dental and other testing in that unit that they're going to be performing as well. So I'm happy about that as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Right. And one of the things we did too is we kept in mind our demographic, recognizing that we had a number of elderly and disabled individuals at some of these sites. Our partners were willing to go directly to homes and do testing and vaccination if someone identifies that they weren't able to leave their home to come down and participate. So they've been really flexible and really great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we kind of talked about it already in some of our other meetings, but I just want to bring back to everyone's attention about the options that are available to residents who are behind in their rent. When we are sending out communications to the residents, we are trying to make sure they are aware of all of their options. So the CDC, through the moratorium, has it's called the Eviction Prevention Declaration Form, that it says that an individual who is struggling to pay their rent, that they can provide that to their landlord. We give that to the residents. We put that in every resident, in an envelope to every resident, that they can fill out this form if they wanted to make sure that we were aware that they were struggling. Even though we have still provided them information with about interims and how you can have your rent reduced, we continue to push that information out. We have the household reporting line where an individual can call in. They don't have to make a trip to the management office. It's 24/7. Someone pulls that off of the voicemail and starts the process for the resident and sends them information back in writing. We are also allowing residents to participate in our repayment agreement program. We are continuing to get information out as we get it about rental assistance opportunities. And if for some reason we end up in court because of an eviction process, we're willing to even go the additional step and enter into an agreement with the resident about how they can become current with their rent with us. So we're willing, our goal is not to evict anyone over rent. Our goal is to help residents gain access to these different opportunities for them so that they can maintain housing. And
is there an opportunity to seek assistance for rent retroactively if you indeed qualified?
Yes.
Yes, through the Community Action Agencies program, yes. They just need to identify the month that they were impacted.
Okay.
And they pay future months as well.
Nice. Okay, so there's plenty of bandwidth, there's plenty of balance in those programs to meet any anticipated requests. Okay.
So we partner heavily with JFS for PRC funds and CAA that is receiving a lot of the county funds to help supply. I will say part of the issue, even though we've collected 708,000, part of the issue is getting the residents to fill out the form. But we're still pushing for it because we would rather get the dollars instead of evicting.
Why do they hesitate to fill out the form when it seems like there's every advantage in filling out the form and true hardship if they don't?
to be just totally honest, Mr. Miles, if I could bottle that up, I'll sell it to you. I mean, I could give you an answer, but I just don't know. I mean, we get responses, but we don't, I mean, I don't think any of us know. What we think is once the moratorium is lifted, I think then there'll be more people that will be scrambling to get it, which, you know, that's just the way some people operate, I guess.
And maybe I'm stepping on Marquita's next slides, but when does the moratorium, when is it anticipated to end?
It's the end of June.
And end of June?
Yes.
And there have been recent court decisions in favor of landlords in favor of landlords being able to presume evictions. Has that played into that date of end of June?
No, I think that they've extended it twice, and I think they've picked a date, and they've provided lots of funds so people can stay current and go into the future. So there's been a lot of conversation, you know, back and forth. There's been trade groups that are supported by landlords that have filed lawsuits against the CDC to say that whether they had the authority to do the moratorium.
Yeah.
So I think now at this point, the powers that be have said, okay, in June, we're going to call it because we provided ample funds for individuals. Now, I will say, even during the pandemic, this form that Marquita is talking about, the declaration form, if you cannot fill that out and prove that COVID impacted you, you still could be evicted. So it has to be COVID related for you not to be evicted for non-payment of rent. So there's been landlords that have been successful in evicting even during the COVID period.
How does that happen?
Once you fill out the form, there's been some magistrates that will allow the opposing attorney for the landlord to, what I call, interview the tenant in court. So and there's a few questions on here that are particularly related to COVID. If the tenant doesn't answer those questions, then the moratorium is geared towards the pandemic. If they don't answer the questions that pertain to the pandemic, they grant the eviction.
You get the tenant under oath.
Yep.
Now,
now we haven't done that, but I'm just saying that's
right.
I think Mr. Miles' question was, has people been evicted? And I just wanted to give both sides.
Yeah.
That was certainly part of it. But in the course of dealing with our tenants who are looking for relief, they're self-certifying through this period so far, correct, about their income?
Yes.
Yes, they have the opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And in doing so, we make sure that they get information back in writing that says, we recognize that they've given us this information and they're certifying this information is true.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's one of the waivers that HUD has permitted us to use self-certification.
Got it.
But the bad and the good part about that is we're going to find out if they actually did get any income through EIV at a later date. And so that number, that bad debt number that we've been talking about, it potentially could grow if somebody actually was working and certified that they were not, because we're going to go back, recalculate their rent and say you owe us.
Yeah.
So that's going to could have a negative impact on us. We're not sure yet.
Yeah. Has HUD spoken to, and in anticipation of that scenario, as we're trying to claw back, earnings from people who for whatever reason, miscertified.
Yeah, their position is, as a housing authority, once you find out, you got to go after it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And then off to the left, it just speaks to the average rent. It's $187 for asset management and $315 for the Touchstone portfolio. Currently, our occupancy for public housing is 92%. The occupancy in Touchstone is 98%. And we're going through the RAD conversions, and those portfolios are at 97. We have a number of units that are offline due to the construction that's going on at those properties. Okay, CMHA strong. You know, when the right when our staff went home, Mr. Johnson had these T-shirts made, and our staff proudly were just displaying their CMHA strong T-shirts. And as we were going around through the buildings and doing our various food drives, and you know, working with our residents, we were wearing our CMHA strong. The staff was on the site throughout the pandemic. So the title of my next slide is Prepared to Serve. Will and Janelle talked about the PPE that they provided to the staff. This is how they were able to continue with the work, continue to serve the residents at the site, continue to deal with any emergencies, urgent, as well as regular routine work orders. And we were able to do that because we had the equipment that allowed us to go into the properties and do that in a safe manner. Additionally, we armed our residents as well as our staff with as much information as we could. We talked about and gave flyers. HR sent out emails with information about how to put on your PPE. We went over that in our department meeting. We talked about the best practices. We made sure that everyone understood the importance of staying 6 feet apart. That includes in our management offices, but also we needed to make sure that our staff, our residents were aware that that is what the staff was going to be doing. We didn't want anyone to be offended, but we were asking that everyone, for the safety of each other, that they maintain their 6 foot distancing. And we had to make sure that residents understood why. Proper hand washing, what do you do if you're sick? And again, continuing to have those meetings and updates were, I think, very critical to allowing us to continue to do the work. During this time, we were able to do 34,815 work orders. The average days of completion was 16 days. And from 24 to 48 hours, we were able to do over 12,000 work orders, which is like 37% of our work orders within the first 2 days of receiving them.
So Marquita, were you able to give PPE to the residents at all? Did you distribute that to them at all?
Yes.
I mean, constantly, are you still doing that? They come to you to get it, or how do you do that?
Yes, that's a really great question. We sent out over 2,000 masks, and we mailed masks to residents during the time when it was very scarce. And we actually, we had a food distribution at Millville about 4 weeks ago, and we gave out, along with the food, we also gave out masks.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
yes, so
Okay,
we had
great.
great partners in closing the health gap. Gave us some. There were individual donors. There were people who were making masks that provided it to us. So we tried to stay in front of that and stay in communication with JRAB to make sure that we were addressing any of the needs. Also, we were able to provide cleaning supplies to our seniors.
Oh, great.
At a time when it was very difficult to find disinfectant. So we were able to do that as well.
Good job. Good job. Good job.
Part of how we were able to do those things were also because of the Yardi system and the handheld system, which allowed us to electronically dispatch work orders to our maintenance staff. Our maintenance staff were able to go home with their vehicles, and then from their homes dispatch directly to the site where they needed to do the work, their very first work order. So we were cutting out some of that initial in-office time because we're putting the work order directly on their work order, and they dispatch first thing in the morning to their site, which was really great for scattered sites because we have properties on the far edges, on the east and the west, and we were able to send people in and cut down on some of that traveling time. But also, this is probably my favorite thing about this, is it cut down the paper chase. So you once that work order is completed, it actually marks it in our system so that we're aware of where we stand on our work orders and the residents' needs at any point in time. It also is going to allow us to track our productivity by employees to see if there's additional training that might be needed, or maybe we may need to rethink where individuals are located. One of the things that Will actually didn't mention, but it's a change that was made a couple of years ago, but it's been very instrumental in assisting us in being more responsive to residents, is that the warehouses was initially down on the main campus, and those warehouses have now been put out into the areas where we have the largest cluster of units. So we have a warehouse at the Seti Kuhn property, which is in Walnut Hills. Then there is a warehouse at the Millville area, and then there is the warehouse that's in our Finlater Gardens area out in Winton Hills. And so now moving those supplies from down at the main campus and out to where the contractors and our staff are doing the work has been really helpful. Upcoming will be, and part of the resident cafe will be residents' abilities to put in their own work orders. And then also the vendor cafe, which Janelle spoke about, that we're going to be doing some training with the vendors. And so she's talking about the vendor cafe from the perspective of the vendors being able to do purchase orders. But I'm looking at it from the perspective of us being able to get work items to the vendors. Okay. So let me just very quickly, we have a large portion of our work orders are related to just general maintenance items, blinds and broken towel bars. But in terms of cost, our greatest costs are in our plumbing, HVAC areas, as well as our janitorial. And we've spoken about our waste collection. And then just finally, RAD conversion. We've talked a lot about how the RAD conversions are important because of how it's updating the building itself. But I just wanted to say that we have our property management team that is working hard to qualify individuals for the tax credit, to check units, get residents signed in as far as their leases, and making sure that they understand all of the rules. And so those individuals play an important part in the RAD conversion as well. And that's what I have, so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation.
Good job. Very good.
Thank you.
Any other comments for Marquita or questions?
You know what? I just said one thing, Gary.
Yeah.
Can you get us a copy of these presentations as well? I think you did last time. That was great. If you can get that to us, that'd be great.
Okay. And then finally, not least, Joe is going to give us an update on real estate and construction. Joe, the floor is yours.
Crystal, if you don't mind. And I always say they save the best for last.
Okay. Okay.
Crystal? Okay, I want to start. I'm in charge of the Director of Real Estate and Construction. And next slide. Wanted to talk to the board about the capital grants. Currently, you see 5 grants listed, but the oldest one, 2016, has been submitted for closing. All of our grants come with very specific rules and regulations. And I try to update the board almost every time I do this, so there's clear understanding. We have to obligate 90% of these grants within the first 2 years, and we have to expend these grants within the second 2 years of issuance. We've been lucky enough, I shouldn't say it's lucky, HUD has extended both the obligation and the expenditure dates for all of our grants by 1 year. So we're on track with all of them, regardless of the extension. So we're doing really well at CMHA. We have money set aside for RAD upgrades. We have money set aside for capital improvements. We have money set aside if we have emergencies like what recently happened at Stanley Row. Next slide, please.
Remind us what recently happened at Stanley Row.
Stanley Row, we had a stairwell failure on what I call the west wing, where one of the risers had collapsed and created an emergency situation where we had to lock that stairwell off.
Right.
We found a contractor that could complete the repairs and fabricate the new stairwell for the west wing.
Right.
We reevaluated the east wing and we replaced 20% of those risers and stair treads, and we repaired the other ones.
Sure. Thank you.
So far in this calendar year, we have generated 44 POs for a total amount of $1,400,000. This includes things that we have done throughout the agency, including camera replacements, scattered sites, rehabilitation in specific units. We have done some pre-work at Horizon Hills before the RAD closing. We have done interior renovations for lead abatement. We've had storm damage in other locations that we've been able to get all of this work done. Next slide. Construction contracts totaling $2.1 million, again, throughout the agency at various AMPs. Marquette Manor, we had facade issues, water infiltration that we had to take care of. We installed, before the RAD closing, camera systems and upgraded the access control at Pinecrest and Park Eden. President recently had an emergency tuck pointing issue after that inspection was completed. We're finishing up the San Marco door and window replacement for that particular property. We completed the maintenance building renovation at Mariana Terrace. And we did a hillside stabilization study to make sure that we were not going to have issues at Horizon Hills. It also included additional stabilization measures that we are sending out for quote for the Millvale hillside. So all of that is work that is keeping us extremely busy. Next slide. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our recently completed projects. Next slide. Sutterview. This project, I can't say enough about the transformation that this project has done for the agency. I have said a lot of times that CMHA has specific flagship properties, but I call this a flagship family development. This is a major gut renovation right down to the stud, including exterior renovations that took this drab, dreary development and turned it into what anyone should be able to call home. We did plumbing, we did site work, we did windows, we did HVAC, we did insulation, we did new roof lines. This was, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, one epic transformation. Completed in January of 2021. This could not have been completed without the cooperation of a lot of other departments at CMHA. This is not just a construction renovation, but without Mary and her team, relocation team, without Marquita and her property management team, without legals consulting, and without development, without construction, this project would not have gotten done the way it got done. Next slide, please. The Evanston, a lot easier and a lot less complex due to the overall scope of work. This too created some problems that could not have been overcome without the continued collaboration of all of CMHA's departments. This project was, we had 10 vacant units to start this project. All relocation was kept within the building, and these were done in phases of groups of 5, taking us almost a year to get this completed. Next slide. So projects in construction currently. Next slide. Pinecrest, 190 units, 1 building. Again, relocation on site. We gave this contractor 3 floors to start this project. They are ahead of schedule. They are on budget, and we're expected to complete 30 days ahead of the scheduled closing. This again was a collaborative effort in design, in creating the scope. We have a great contractor. We had a great architect. This is going to be a true transformation of the interior of this particular building. Next project. Park Eden, very similar in size and scope to Pinecrest, though it has seen its challenges early on. We're 40% complete in this particular project. We've hit every unit type, but we are now into some common areas. We don't expect any more issues or any type of delays because of permitting or because of inspections or anything else. We are slightly behind. We have put together a plan to put this back on track. We believe this plan, it's in force now, so I take that back a little bit. We will have this back on track, but we're also putting together an effort to have this completed early. So right now it's scheduled to close in April of 2022. We're hoping to get this completed in March.
How are our projected costs changing with the increases in building materials and other inflationary aspects, just inability to get materials even if the workers are on the site?
Well, let's talk about the 2 projects under construction today. There is no cost increase because of anything that is going on because lack of shortage or lack of manpower for these 2 projects. The budget's been set. We have everything in place, and we have 2 really good contractors for these large transformations that are extremely proactive. We've had no delays in any materials at all for either one of these. If we talk about pipeline developments, which is going to be my next slide, it changes.
That's okay, but I'll wait.
That's all right. Next slide. So pipeline developments. Next slide. So this development goes to your question. we have a construction budget for this project, identified right around $12 million. Prices are changing so much on this 2 4-story buildings that we've seen an increase of $2 million in the last 2 months alone. So this affects the development budget, this affects the construction budget, this affects the project, all of that. These are things that we need to overcome to find additional sources to keep pipeline projects moving, like a new construction, like Bennett Point. So we don't think there will be an issue or shortage of materials when we do this project, but the cost alone for lumber has seen a 300% increase. So it's not only affecting Bennett Point, but we have to look at this at all of our construction sites as we start to do our RAD conversions.
How do they meet pro forma with
Well,
these increased costs?
So the performance, and Gary, if I say this wrong, or maybe you might want to answer this, Gary Boyers, the performance for the projects?
Yeah, so that is a very difficult question. Actually, one we're dealing with right now. So anytime the costs are going up like they are at Bennett Point, we have to go back to the syndicators and maybe ask for additional tax credit pricing, or go back to the city to see if they have any available funding that through their NOFA or through a TIF. We go back to the lender to see if maybe we can find a way to get a little bit more money out of the loan. So it really is kind of a scramble when we have these additional costs, and it's one that we're trying to plug right now.
We also look at our partner to reduce their overhead costs to meet in the middle as well. So even though that these are things that happen, it's not anything that hasn't happened before to us right before closing. So we're, as Gary and Joe said, we're looking at all of these things, and then we have to do a hard negotiation with our partner at what their overhead is. So we're sure we're staying in line with what they're making on a total project as well.
A quick question. What's the likelihood some of these projects may have to be delayed because the costs are so much higher? Do you have any sense for that at all? I mean,
we don't anticipate that Bennett Point's not going to take off when it's scheduled to take off. So the next one Joe's going to bring up, it's far enough away that will give us enough time to work through any issues as far as that is concerned. And who knows, the economy may be back in line by that time as well on the next project that he's going to show. We do have to go back out for bid for Mariana Terrace because of the cost difference. So from what they bid and what they supplied, they can't hold to that cost, what they submitted to us. So we have to go back out for bid for that construction project as well. But at this point, we don't anticipate not being able to complete a project or having delays. For example, what's just happened in the last 2 weeks is the county just announced $40 million that they're, going to be given out for projects as well. So we have an opportunity to apply for those funds for gap funders, for gap filling that we didn't have access to, let's say 2 weeks ago. So we have options to go to, so we don't anticipate these projects not going forward.
And that 40 million is earmarked for affordable housing?
Correct.
So to Mr. Johnson and Gary's point, we're still pushing forward with Bennett Point, even though we just had that conversation regarding price increase by the GC. This property is on 12th Street. This is 12th Street, right on the edge of Reading Road, right across the street from the casino. Next slide, please. Mr. Johnson mentioned Mariana Terrace. We are still moving forward with this, even though we were just notified by the general contractor that he can no longer hold pricing on this, mainly because of lumber. But he cited that almost all materials for this particular job have increased in price. So this is simply a reshuffle. We're still pushing forward for a possible late August, very early September closing, even though we have this new information. Next slide, please. Horizon Hills is out to bid now. This is a 32 unit in Price Hill, right as you start going up top of the hill at Warsaw. We are doing HVAC replacements. The intent of this particular project, this has seen major renovations back in 2015, completed very early of 2016. But we're going to be removing the boilers and provide additional or add new HVAC equipment to each unit so that the tenant can control their heat and air conditioning as opposed to these centralized boilers. These are utility paid units, and this fits well with CMHA's model for utility paid units. Next slide, please.
Meaning a utility paid unit is one where the utility is paid by the agency.
By the resident.
Okay.
So Riverview San Marco is one project. We have an architect on board.
Sorry to interrupt, Joe.
Sure.
So what is the level of insulating we do in anticipation of getting rid of a boiler and a centralized system? What is the standard that we're trying to achieve in terms of R factor, whatever?
So R factor for attics, we usually go for an R factor of 18, which is usually 2 to 3 R factor higher than what is recommended. In the walls, we insulate to R factor of 23, which is what the recommended is. It's hard to get something more. So we insulate all of our product during any renovation project. There is going to be something at the end where you'll be able to see this insulation in a video slide presentation, but we try to go above and beyond every time we're able to insulate a property.
Okay. Is it blown in product in the attic and walls?
Many times it's blown in, but in your walls, it's going to be a rolled paper product. So Riverview San Marco is a combined project. We have an architect on board. We have all the things in place to start this scope of work. These will have a historic component to it, but these are both going to be substantial rehabilitations. Both of these buildings are older, in need of a lot of different work. So we're looking at all of the systems, very similar to what we've done, if not a little bit more than what we've seen at Pinecrest and or Park Eden. We're looking at this financial closing sometime in April of 2022. And this is a RAD conversion. Next slide, please. Maple Towers is 120 units, one building. This will be a 4% deal. But again, we're looking at all the major systems in this particular building, including changing the entrance to the lobby to make it a little bit more inviting. Right now, it's kind of 90-degree turns throughout the entire lobby to get into the building area. So we're trying to create a better flow for this particular building. We have architects on board, but we have not determined what that probable closing date is in 2022, but it will be before the end of the calendar year. Next. Very similar time frame for the Beechwood. These will close most likely a month, 2 months apart from each other. They're so close together that we want to make sure that construction flows properly for these two buildings. That's why we have them on a slightly different path for closing. But again, we're looking at all of the systems in this building to upgrade this old structure. Next. Logan Commons is a new development. This is a senior development. This is in very near Findlay Market, a block away. So this is something that's in the pipeline. This has been awarded Fact 50 tax credits from the city. So we are working towards getting this to the finish line. Next. In all, we are looking at over $200 million in development for the work that we're currently working on and what we have in the pipeline that is going to be pumped back into the local economy one way or the other. So Ken, if it's okay with the board, I did present, have created a slideshow for Sutterview to go over the construction. It's not really going to be me narrating, but I think it's really unique. This is the first time the construction department has ever put together a slideshow showing the beginning of construction up through demolition to the completion of the actual product. So Crystal, if you wouldn't mind starting that.
And Joe, while you're getting that prepared, I just want to remind the board. So as Joe said, over 200 million in just what he just showed, but we've already surpassed 114 million of what we've already invested. So we're well on our way to that $1 billion mark. And as we get through all of our units getting across the finish line. And it's only been 2.5 years.
Pretty good.
Okay, Crystal.
That's good.
Good form.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm shown up by Laverne.
That sledgehammer was hard to lift. Mhm.
Joe, it's Jeffrey, and I need to ask one question, and maybe I should, direct this towards Rima. But I mean, do we hedge our commodities? As you indicated, our lumber, 200%. Actually, it's 375% above last year. Do we have a group or organization that helps us with that, or are we on our own on that?
So Jeffrey, that would be up to the GC. So it's very difficult for CMHA to purchase the product like a commodity like lumber and provide it to a GC for a construction contract. So it's built into their pricing.
It's not just lumber either. It's a lot of different commodities.
It's everything has gone up. It is the condensers, it is the doors, it is the windows. It's every commodity has seen a price increase because of lack of production.
Did you actually increase the square footage when you cantilevered the bump outs on the second floor?
So yes, we did, not by a lot, but it did increase the square footage by a lot of those bump outs that we did. So
Yeah.
by bump outs, it's not just the roof line that changed. We did add additional bedrooms and or bathrooms to some of the units.
One of the stovetops looked to be glass or ceramic as opposed to electric heating.
That would have been a handicap unit. That's, again, talk about commodities. So at the beginning of this, as we're releasing units, the appliances were flowing very well. And we were getting everything we needed. Towards the end of this project, talk about scrambling to find appliances. It was an absolute nightmare. But again, it was the effort of Will McCabe and Janelle and what they did in procurement and doing bulk purchasing that allowed us to go to different vendors to say, hey, you know, we need this. We put purchase orders typically in 6 months before the product was actually needed. And we checked weekly on appliances and their availability. Yep, they're going to be there. Yep, they're going to be there. Finally, the day they're due, oh, the truck didn't arrive, right? Or the truck just left and yours weren't on it. So I tell you what, talk about an epic finish to an epic reconstruction project. Sutter View, we got it done.
That looks beautiful too. Really does.
It really does.
It does, it does.
Yeah, and you met the tax credit filing deadlines and all the rest.
We got all that completed. Yes, sir.
We got all of it completed, Mr. Miles, but we did have to ask for extensions. They were granting, it wasn't anything that was not unusual because of the pandemic. So yes, we got everything within our extension that we asked for. So that was a big help. So we, as Joe said, this was a huge project. The city, you know, we had some challenges in the beginning that held us up, but we got through those. And then at the end on the appliance orders, COVID, our construction project manager got COVID, workers got COVID, but we kept, staff kept the job going, and we asked for a small extension. It was granted, so we made it through really well. So this is something that we all should be proud of, based on what we had to go through.
Hear, hear.
Greg, I just want to say congratulations to you and Joe and all of the staff for this. I think it's phenomenal. Really, really well done.
Thank you.
I do have one more question for Joe. If we have time for one more question. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if the board has or not, but I have not heard anything about the Millvale Hillside issue. The last I heard was about that was probably a couple of years ago. So what is the status of that?
If you don't mind, Joe, I'll just chime in to kind of fast forward it. We had a couple issues. We had some separation in the road. It wasn't our road, it was the city's road. And so we came to an agreement with the city of Cincinnati. With that agreement, there was a total of 500 feet that we were responsible for. We were able to negotiate 300 feet of that 500 away with the new stabilization that was put in the road. Joe's department, we went through with our demolition. Joe's department did some stabilization. And then as you see, as he mentioned, he's going out to bid to do probably the last part of a little more stabilization that we're putting on the hill. That's kind of the fast track. So we got through the process with the city. We got 300 feet of 500 feet off of CMHA's back. We got it stabilized for now, but I think we all know there probably will be movement, and we're going to do a little more work there to help further stabilize it as we work with our developer to go through the transformation of Millville. Did I miss anything, Joe?
No, I think you got it all, Mr. Johnson. And I'm glad you did it because I think I would have gone into much more detail.
Well,
Does
thank you.
does that help? Does that help, Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yeah.
Where we are with that?
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to all our presenters. I think I hope and believe you can tell that the board is duly impressed with the efforts you've been making, and particularly through all the difficulties of the COVID episode. So,
Mr. Miles, I just want to note that Mr. Harris had to drop off at 8 o'clock. So Gary, if you will make sure you note that in your board minutes, that Mr. Harris dropped off at 8 o'clock, that would be great.
thank you. So, moving on, item 5 on our agenda is public comments. We don't have any scheduled speakers or any requests. That's still operative? That's a question, Mr. Secretary?
Yes.
Okay, and item 6 is discussion of secretary recommendations. Item 6A is the financial report. Resolution 5537, approving the bad debt write-offs for April of 2021. Is there a motion to accept?
Second,
Thank you. Any questions?
that was Tom who made the motion.
Yes.
Oh.
Under the auspices of mute.
Yes.
We're learning how to lip read through all these Zooms.
Good job.
So, and thank you. Any questions on the reports? Resolution? Hearing none, a roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, Resolution 5538 to approve the fiscal year 2021 April financial statements for the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Excuse me. Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Item 6B is request for approval to solicit bids for the following items. Resolution 5539, providing authorization to proceed with the request for proposals and solicitations for general goods and services from outside vendors. 1, solicitation 2021-2002, housing choice voucher, project-based assistance for existing, rehabilitated, and newly constructed housing units. 2, solicitation 2021-3002, modular office design build at Sutter View. 3, solicitation 2021-3003, construction cost estimating. 4, solicitation 2021-3004, structural tests and special inspections. 5, solicitation 2021-3005, Horizon Hills HVAC replacement and alterations. 6, solicitation 2021-4006, consultants to assist with the new development and preservation. And is there a motion to accept?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions on any of those? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Item 6C is resolutions to award contract renewals. 1, Resolution 5540, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to sign a 1-year contract extension option for contract 2017-5502. Services for labor negotiations with Clemens, Nelson and Associates Incorporated in a not to exceed amount of $145,000 annually for a maximum 5-year contract paid for by management services funds.
Motion.
Thank you. A second? Did I not hear the second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions?
question,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. Is this
Please.
just for legal services, basically? Is this a
Mr.
law firm?
Secretary.
It's Lisa, you want to answer that or you want me to answer? Go ahead, go ahead.
I think she's muted.
You got your mute on, Lisa.
I don't think she does.
There she is.
Sorry. It's a consulting firm that's not necessarily representing us in a legal capacity, but assisting us with labor negotiations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, the resolution passes. Item 6D is adopt a resolution to award the following construction contracts. Resolution 5541, the secretary requested that we table this item. Moving on, item 6E is adopt a resolution general, resolution 5542, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to negotiate and enter into a contract for solicitation 2021-7004, printing and mailing services with Joseph Burning Printing Company, Karnak Enterprises LLC, and Specialty Lithographing Company in a not to exceed amount of $400,000 per contractor for a maximum 5-year contract or the board approved budget, funded by operational funds, administrative fees, management services funds, and development funds.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, the resolution passes. Now, resolution 5543, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to submit an application for up to $2 million in bond gap financing to the Ohio Housing Finance Agency for Riverview and San Marco.
Motion.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 5544, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to apply for Public Housing Capital Fund Emergency Safety and Security Grant with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, the resolution passes. And now we've reached that moment in the meeting where if there's no other business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
are there any questions or discussion?
quick question about our next meeting.
Sure.
Will it be by Zoom or in person?
It will be in person because it will be after the state of Ohio has lifted, the governor has lifted the emergency. So, which will be it'll be June, in late June, but it will be in person at our offices, but the only individuals will be in the boardroom, as I mentioned before, will be the board members and myself. We will have the appropriate either laptops or cameras, so the public will have access to you. And if there's anyone that wants to speak before the board, they will be speaking in the other room to further provide additional safety for the board. And we'll have these panels up next to each board member as well to further create safety for the board as we're moving forward.
Greg.
Yes, sir.
I had a conversation with Bill Seitz this week,
Mhm.
and he gave me some indication that that date may have been extended past June 1st. And so I have them on our Hamilton County Township Association meeting, Zoom meeting, on Thursday, and I will double check that.
Okay,
But I thought he told me that actually got extended, and
Okay.
I'll find out and let you know.
okay. No,
Might,
well,
it might
we'll
open up additional options if we.
we'll check.
if we do
Yeah,
that.
we'll check
kind of-
it out as well.
Yeah,
if
I
we,
kind of think so.
Yeah. Okay, great. If not, we'll be in Zoom. If not, but we'll check it out as well. And then, yeah, Tom, if you could.
Yeah,
let me
I'll
know
let,
what
I'll let you
find
know
out.
this week.
Okay, great.
And where will staff be? As staff is on the Zoom call with all of us, where will staff be once we resume in the building?
They'll still be on Zoom,
Zoom.
so they'll probably be at home.
Okay. All right. Well, roll call to adjourn. Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Moore.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion passes, and the regular board meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Mr. Chair, I just have one comment before the board leaves. I just want to say, Mr. O'Donnell, you said thank you to us, but really, I want to say thank you to the board. Without you guys approving, we start the meeting off with 10 different instrumentalities. Without your guys' help in approving and understanding what we're trying to accomplish and how. And resolution 5543 is another example with us going after bonding for 2 million is another one of those creative ways of trying to get financing to do this RAD transformation, and the board approving it. It really helps us to be flexible. So I just want to say thank you to you guys as well as we are walking through this. And I know, and I hope you are okay with the presentations. Staff put a lot of time, we all put a lot of time in them.
Yeah.
Really
Oh,
thank
they're
you.
great. They're great.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really help all of us stand together about what we're doing and the good, the bad, but all of the things that we're doing as a group. And that's including the board, because we couldn't do any of this in any silo. So I just appreciate that whole relationship and the board approving these difficult things that we're putting before you. So I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Greg. You're welcome, of course.
Thank you, Greg.
Yep.
Of course. Well, have a great night, everyone. Be safe.
Good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye now.
Thank you.